Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War is the 17th entry in the series. Originally, this game was not supposed to be a Black Ops entry, and initially general development was a split coordinated effort by Sledgehammer and Raven. However, the two studios had a disagreement that led to development being slower than usual. So publisher Activision stepped in, removed Sledgehammer from the project, and inserted Treyarch in their place. Now, how this connects to the other Black Ops games is a mystery to me, since technically World at War started the Black Ops storyline. And then they have a character in here who's the father of one of the Modern Warfare antagonists, which is strange. And the last Black Ops game before this one didn't have a single-player campaign at all in the first place. So you'll have to excuse me if I seem a bit lost here. These Black Ops games are all over the place when it comes to continuity. So I just treated this game as a standalone thing where you don't really have to be invested or even have played the other games to enjoy the story for this one, which is actually somewhat true. Speaking of which, Black Ops Cold War places its setting in the early to mid-1980s, set in the Cold War during the Reagan era. It supposedly takes place some 13 years after the first Black Ops game, which doesn't really help matters much, but whatever. The story is about a team of clandestine operatives from different intelligence agencies, including the CIA and MI6, who are hunting a Soviet spy codenamed Perseus, whose intention is to cause a tilt in the balance of power from the United States to that in favor of the Soviet Union. Now, the Cold War is arguably the most complicated conflict in human history, as it spans literal decades from around 1947, 2 years after the end of World War II, all the way to 1991. And during that time, there were multiple proxy wars that took place within the greater Cold War, including the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Afghan-Soviet War, the Angolan Civil War, the Cuban Revolution, the Iran-Iraq War, the Nicaraguan Revolution, and the Congo Crisis. The only wars from this list that's depicted in this game would include the Vietnam War and the Soviet-Afghan War, as well as operations in East Berlin. Since the Cold War is such a vast and complex subject, I thought the devs did a rather decent job at providing a broad spectrum of what actually took place during the time period in the early 80s. With that said, the story in this game specifically is something that works on multiple levels. This game has 4 writing credits attached to it, one of them being the renowned David S. Goyer, who worked on the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy, Man of Steel, and a bunch of other movies, along with being a story consultant on the first Black Ops game, and he was a writer for the second one as well. There's a few clever ideas thrown in here that work. One of them is that the player gets to choose their character from their appearance down to the agency they work for, but the character whose codename is Bell is given a set path in the story. This path, however, can be altered through the inclusion of dialogue options, a first for a Call of Duty game. You get to determine at specific points in the story how the overarching narrative plays out, which leads to multiple endings, something that hasn't been seen in the franchise since 2012's Black Ops 2, and before that, 2008's World at War. The characters, specifically Russell Adler and Bell, are each intriguing pieces to a greater puzzle that offer multiple runs of the campaign to see how their arcs would play out in different ways. This is the result of a strong script that knows how to pace itself properly as it introduces new characters and explores a variety of ideas in a non-linear fashion. Honestly, the story is so well written that it arguably could be a contender for the best script in the series, right next to Call of Duty 4 and the 2019 reboot of Modern Warfare. Whether it's number 1 or not is a debate for another time, but there is no denying that what is delivered here is satisfying, more so especially if you're familiar with the subject matter of the era. From both a gameplay and a technical perspective, Black Ops Cold War takes a few steps back. For some reason, the brilliant gun mount mechanic from the Modern Warfare reboot is MIA in here, which makes the gameplay automatically feel archaic. Even worse, they implemented armored enemies, and these sons of bitches are simply annoying. They're not remotely fun to fight, especially if you're playing on veteran difficulty like I did. These enemies are frustrating damage sponges that will absorb multiple entire clips of ammunition, even with several confirmed headshots. I'm baffled as to how Treyarch and Raven thought that this was a good idea to insert these types of enemies into a Call of Duty game, but here we are. And no, this isn't the first time that Call of Duty has used damage sponge enemies in its level design, but this is notably the worst version of such game design in the series, so much so that it's worth mentioning here. Then there's the technical issues. No, the game never crashed or had the AI teleporting or had the game freeze or anything like that, but I did notice severe clipping issues at the end of the mission Echoes of a Cold War as you're on this platform that's being raised, and your character will just randomly jump from spot to spot way off outside the platform itself. And of course, as this is happening, your character is still susceptible to damage, which is great fun on veteran difficulty. But that was one instance. Even worse are the audio issues. This game has some serious audio problems where the music is simply too loud and everything else is just low volume, from the sounds of gunfire to even character dialogue. It's so bad that turning on subtitles are simply mandatory, and that's never a good thing. The lack of innovation, or rather regression, when it comes to the boots on ground gameplay in this is offset with a strong emphasis, in at least some of the missions, on stealth. A prime example of this is the mission Red Light, Green Light. Another great example would be the one standout mission in the game, Desperate Measures, a James Bond-style espionage mission which has you playing as a KGB mole within one of their headquarters as you attempt to find a way inside for fellow CIA operatives. Call of Duty has done these types of clandestine missions before, but it doesn't really happen very often, so seeing it here was a nice change of pace. Black Ops Cold War is a fantastic game when it comes to the story, but it doesn't offer much that's new when it comes to the gameplay. It's a notable example of taking 2 steps forward and 4 steps back, which ultimately makes it an uneven experience. If it were not for the strong script and characters, this would be one of the weaker games in the series.
What? The lab? What the hell is Bell doing in the lab? Bell, forget about the damn lab. I need to know about the